Super Smash Bros., one of the most innovative and just plain fun fighting games out there. This series was a big part of my life. I remember pouring countless hours into it with my friends. And you probably did too, especially if you ever owned a Nintendo 64, a GameCube, or a Wii. Oh, back in the days. Anyways, let's get right into it. Here's the history of the Super Smash Bros. It started out as a simple idea, thought up by Masahiro Sakurai and Satoru Iwata in their spare time. Iwata wanted to create a 4-player game that made use of the N64 controller's joystick. Now remember, this was around the late 90s, and the use of the analog sticks weren't popular yet. Though Atari systems were the first to introduce joystick controls, the N64 popularized it. As for Sakurai, he felt the market was overcrowded with traditional 2D fighting games. He wanted to create something fresh, which gave gamers a new experience every time they played the game. In essence, he wanted to make a 4-player battle royale. Sakurai and Iwata shared their thoughts and ideas with each other, and eventually started work on a prototype, which included no Nintendo characters at first. Sakurai was responsible for the planning, design, modeling, and movement, while Iwata handled all the programming. It was very difficult for them to find time to work on this project, as they both were extremely busy with their day-to-day work. Sakurai would send over the data and specs, while Iwata would assemble it. The project slowly took shape as they sent changes back and forth. Iwata was very happy about how the prototype was coming along. A staff member even complained at how he only came to life when he was working on the programming for it. Finally though, the prototype was given a name, Kakuto Jimu Ryu, translated as Dragon King the Fighting Game. The word Ryu in the codename comes from scenery they used from the Ryocho neighborhood, location of HAL Laboratory, which they decided to use as the background in the prototype. Initially, the prototype only had faceless models for the characters, but Sakurai felt that it was important to build an atmosphere where players would feel comfortable and familiar with. Then he thought, what better selection than from the popular icons of Nintendo? He then proceeded to replace the models with a few Nintendo characters, then later received permission to use them. Nowadays, we see many fighting games using all-star characters from different franchises such as Marvel vs. Capcom and Street Fighter X Tekken. But people were skeptical with this kind of idea back in the day. Extremely confident with the concept of the game, Sakurai and Iwata released a manual on the internet to convince players how fun the game can be. Today, this manual has grown to become the Smash Dojo website, where players can get live updates from developers. With a low budget and small promotion, the game was first released only in Japan for the N64 in January of 1999. Due to the huge success, after only a few months it was later released worldwide and also renamed
Super Smash Bros.
The game was unlike any other fighting game at the time. Instead of having health bars, each player were given lives and percentages. Every time your character was hit, their percent would increase. The higher the percentage, the higher the knockback. If your character fails to recover and falls out of the boundaries, you lose a life. And of course, last player remaining wins.
This game's winner is me.
There's also a time mode, but it's a lot less popular. The biggest difference in the combat style between Super Smash Bros. And games like Street Fighter was that Smash Bros. Required more aerial spacing and platforming skills, since the arena are much larger compared to the traditional 2D fighters. The 4-player compatibility in Smash Bros. Allowed there to be team battles, which added tons of replay value. Oh yeah, and did I mention the inclusion of items? This was what gave Smash Bros. The frantic gameplay and the surprise factor. Items appear at random and are similar to ones found in Mario Kart, such as the red shells and Starman. Good thing though, the game does give you the option to turn off the items if you want a fair match, which I personally prefer because some of the items were way overpowered. If you get bored of the multiplayer mode for some strange reason, there is single player, where you fight rounds of enemies. Some rounds are special, such as Giant Donkey Kong, Metal Mario, and an army of Kirbys, before finally reaching Master Hand. Personally, I felt the single-player mode was short-lived and not very fun. My favorite is actually the 2 extra modes, board the platforms and break the targets. The objective is self-explanatory and it was fun trying to find the best route. As you play the game more and achieve certain requirements, secret characters and a stage will be unlocked. Did you know that Mewtwo, Bowser, and King Dedede were planned to be playable characters, but were cancelled due to the lack of development time? And also, there are 2 beta Kirby stages that are only accessible with the Game Shark. The first beta stage looks like Kirby's Dreamland in progress, while the second beta stage looks like a jargon of random platforms with invisible barriers. Alright, now let's skip a couple years ahead to the E3 Expo in 2001. Nintendo presented a demo of the sequel to Super Smash Bros., which was named Super Smash Brothers Melee! A lot more promotion was put into Melee compared to its N64 counterpart. For example, teasers were shown in between Pokemon movies in Japan theaters. Sakurai was very proud of Melee, so proud that he claimed that Melee is the sharpest Smash Bros. Game out of them all. And of course, Sakurai and the HAL Laboratory developers poured countless days into production. The development took a total of 13 months with long working hours, no holidays, and very short weekend breaks. The reason Sakurai put in this much effort was because he felt that the bar had to be raised. Smash Bros. For the N64 was more of an experiment, and there was no guarantee that it was going to do well. But Melee was different. Everyone had high expectations. Well, all the hard work paid off. The reception was amazing. The reviews were bright. Millions of copies were sold worldwide, making it the best-selling GameCube game ever. Melee made improvements in every aspect to its predecessor. Right when the game starts, the first thing you'll be greeted with is a beautiful opening FMV, which was made by HAL along with 3 separate graphic houses in Tokyo. Visually, Melee made astounding improvements from Smash 64, while showcasing the power of the GameCube. The game also has a much larger character roster, which includes newcomers from Fire Emblem, Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, and more. At the request of Hideo Kojima, the creator of the Metal Gear series, Solid Snake was supposed to be included in Melee, but at the time the game was too far into development, so at the end, his request was rejected. Similarly, the development team wanted to replace Ness with Lucas, but dropped the idea to avoid any delay for the release date. Melee has new items, such as Super and Poison Mushrooms, Metal Box, and Warp Stars. There are also more creative stages with environment hazards. There's an interesting debug stage that is only accessible with an action replay. It was probably for testing purposes only. The development team definitely took note of the weak 1-player mode in Smash 64 because Melee has new single-player modes which includes Adventure, Classic, All-Star, and Home Run Contest. The objective of the game remains the same, however the physics of Melee is completely different this time around. Movement is much faster, and characters also fall faster. Paired up with high shield stun and hit stun, we have a fast-paced Super Smash Bros. Combo Fest. However, performing combos definitely isn't easy. Melee has many advanced techniques such as L cancel, crouch cancel, wave dashing, dash dancing, and more. Without knowing it, Sakurai has created a deep fighting game with a very steep learning curve. Sakurai actually disliked this. He wanted the Smash Bros. Series to be easily accessible by any player at a level playing field, so that win or lose, the player will still be happy. To eliminate any doubt or confusion, quoting from Iwata on an interview with Sakurai, this is what he said. Fundamentally, Smash Bros. Is designed to make different things happen simply by pressing random buttons, so some amazing things can happen without even trying. This makes it easy for beginners to get involved. Whether Sakurai wanted it or not, a large competitive scene sprouted out not long after the game's release. There was even a corporate-sponsored tournament, among others, called the IVGF, Northwest Regional Gaming Festival and Tournament, where $12,500 was paid out to the top 3 finishers. A player named Ken Huang with the handle Sephiroth Ken earned himself $50,000 from Melee tournaments over the course of about 5 years. Alright, now let us skip ahead to the pre-E3 press conference where Satoru Iwata announced the next installment of the Smash Bros. Game. Despite by being told by Iwata that a sequel to Melee will be made, Sakurai was surprised with this announcement. Iwata told Sakurai that he wanted him to be the director for the sequel shortly after Sakurai left HAL Laboratory in 2003. In the end, Sakurai agreed to be the director. The development for the sequel began in 2005. Nintendo opened up a new office in Tokyo dedicated to the production of the game. The development team consisted of various game studios and staff members of previous Smash Bros. Games, which totaled around 100 people. Despite the fact that the developers of the past 2 Smash Bros. Games have been HAL Laboratory, the Brawl development team were given all the original materials and tools from the development of Melee. 1 year later, the game was given its official name, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. The game was later released on March 9, 2008. The release date was supposed to be earlier, but the development team requested more time to work on the game. As you would expect, Brawl received amazing reviews and sales were high. The game has many new additions. There are new stages, new items, and new characters. More importantly, Brawl features a couple of third-party characters. Hideo Kojima finally gets his wish for Snake to be included.
Showtime だ.
And on the game's official website, Japanese fans were asked to submit a character that they wanted to be included, and the most requested third-party character was Sonic the Hedgehog.
You're too slow!
Building further from the previous 2 games, Brawl actually has a very solid one-player campaign called the Subspace Emissary. It's similar to Melee's adventure mode, except it has a much stronger story, told with long and nicely animated cutscenes. Sakurai said himself that he wanted a more fleshed-out single-player mode this time around. To achieve that, he hired Kazushige Nojima, a scenario writer for the Final Fantasy series, to create the storyline for Brawl. There are also the returning stadium modes, which include Home Run Contest, Break the Targets, and Multi-Man Brawl. Except this time around, you can tackle it with a friend. The multiplayer mode is the same, with the addition of a customizable special Brawl mode. My favorite feature of all would have to be the online multiplayer. I still remember when it was announced, I was like, finally, an online Smash Bros! But, to be honest, I was pretty disappointed with the online mode, mainly because of the poor Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. Playing anyone outside of my region was often laggy, even though I had a wired LAN adapter. Plus, Nintendo being the family-friendly company they are, cut out many interactions players could have with each other. Players were unable to communicate in-game and could only play custom matches after adding friend codes. On a brighter note, some cool additional content are customizable stage soundtracks, the ability to save replays, and a stage builder. As everyone would have guessed, the physics in Brawl are completely different compared to Melee. Movement is much more floaty, and characters can dodge multiple times. There are a few characters that have more than 2 jumps, and a few others that have tethering abilities. Remember how I told you Sakurai disliked the steep learning curve in Melee, and he wanted to make Smash easily playable by anyone? Well, he succeeded, and what you get is Brawl. All the advanced techniques found in Melee are taken out, such as crouch cancelling and even L cancelling, which was a classic technique from Smash 64. Some game mechanics are dumbed down. For example, grabbing ledges no longer need precise timing, and characters can grab it when facing away from it. One mechanic that really resonated Sakurai's intentions was tripping. It was a random factor in the game where your character will trip, leaving them open to any attack. For the competitive Smash community, it was a slap in the face. Part of the Smash community were so upset with Brawl that they actually got together and reprogrammed the game, changing all the physics so that it was identical to Melee. This underground version of Brawl came to be known as Project M. However, looking at Brawl from a casual perspective, it is a huge success. Anyone with little to no experience in a Smash Bros. Game can pick it up and learn to play it without much difficulty. With fun and frenzy items such as Smash Balls and assist trophies, Super Smash Bros. Brawl was an amazing party game. Unfortunately, the fourth Smash Bros. Game hasn't been released yet, but it was announced at the E3 2011 that it will be for the Wii U and the 3DS, and the two versions of the game will be cross-compatible in some way. This early announcement was for the purpose of attracting developers needed for the game, because development did not start until May of 2012, since Sakurai was busy working on Kid Icarus Uprising. It's nice to hear that the development team for this next installment of Smash Bros. Will not only be Sakurai's Project Sora, but it will also include help from Namco Bandai Games. Hopefully, the developers for this new Super Smash Bros. Game will find the right balance to satisfy both the casual gamers and the hardcore gamers. Well, that concludes my retrospective for the Super Smash Bros. If you liked it, please drop a comment, rate, and subscribe. There will be more retrospectives to come, don't worry. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh yeah, and if you like Conker, you might want to check out this retrospective.